People often take human dignity for granted. We believe that every person has an innate worth because of their humanity. We extend charity to the homeless and the needy, and we welcome refugees fleeing persecution from other countries. We're shocked by the Holocaust. We're angered by the treatment of women in fundamentalist Islam, and we're outraged by slavery and human trafficking in the modern world. We rightfully demand fair and equal treatment for all of God's creations. While most people would share this view, many might not know that it's largely the product of the Christian faith. Hey there, everyone. My name is Dwayne Bryant. It's great to have you with us again. If you haven't subscribed to this channel already, please consider doing so. Just hit that button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and if you click the bell, you'll get an email notification every time I post something new. Well, today, our theme verse for our video is going to be Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. The Bible makes some pretty incredible claims about the value of humanity. Genesis 1:27 says that God makes humanity in his image. Psalm 8:5 says that he made humans only a little lower than the angels. And when you look at the work of Jesus, he often gave special attention to people who were overlooked and ignored. Ultimately, he died so that humanity might be saved. Well, the culture in which the early church existed often devalued human beings. Ancient games were barbaric by modern standards. Slaves died in the arena while gladiators killed for sport. Unwanted children would be left out in the wilderness to die or be left on a trash heap to be taken by slavers who might sell them into a life of slavery and prostitution. Abortion was attempted even when these rather crude methods often resulted in the death of the mother. Foreigners might be seen as subhuman and treated accordingly. The testimony of a woman in court was considered unreliable, and the testimony of a slave might be admitted only after he had been tortured. Well, world religions today don't fare much better, even in the modern world. The Quran treats women like livestock. It says that they only have half the intelligence of a man, and that they will make up the majority of the people in hell because they are religiously deficient, in addition to being stupid. Modern Muslim leaders have called for the destruction of the Jews, other infidels, and fellow Muslims not considered sufficiently devout. The Nation of Islam, the historic Mormon Church, and fringe cult groups have all been guilty of breathtaking racism. Throughout history, members of various religions have often treated outsiders and the uninitiated as being unworthy of basic respect. Now, let's consider that with the behavior of Jesus. He set the standard for his disciples, ministering to everyone, regardless of gender, age, or social status. He had female followers like Mary and Martha, which would have been scandalous at that time, especially when some Pharisees refused to even look at a woman in public, much less speak to one. Some Pharisees were known as bleeding Pharisees because they would hunch over and look at the ground and perhaps close their eyes while they walked. And so without looking where they were going, they would run headfirst into walls and other obstacles and scratch or bloody themselves, all in the attempt to avoid even looking at a woman. Jesus rebuked his disciples when they tried to dismiss children from coming to him. He reached out to non-Jews like the woman at Jacob's well, and even made them into heroes, like we see in the parable of the Good Samaritan. He ate with people that polite society would have seen as socially undesirable. Most of his apostles were men who did not have the benefit of an advanced education. In other words, Jesus had a universal respect for people considered disposable by the social and religious elite. Very often, the early church continued to follow the example of Jesus. We could look at the Didaskalia for some illustrations of this. The Didaskalia was an early 3rd century manual of Christian life. It says that if a wealthy person were to enter the worship service, the bishop presiding over the service was forbidden to stop and recognize that person on account of his social standing. It also said that if a pauper were to come in, that the bishop was to do everything in his power to ensure that person had a place to sit. Well, this is something virtually unknown in the ancient world, and we can see it in how pagans responded to their Christian neighbors. It was mind-boggling to them that Christians would grant full personhood to everyone in every class and condition. Ancient writers like Celsus, Eunapius of Sardis, Porphyry, and even the Roman Emperor Julian looked down on Christians with condescension and contempt. But look at the curious example of Jesus himself. He came to earth as a Jew at a time when anti-Semitism was prevalent in the Roman Empire. The Apostle Paul says he took the form of a slave. This was in a culture in which slaves were barely considered human. He grew up as a commoner in a very modest home, in a society where privilege and power were expected for important people. The very fact that Jesus chose such a humble birth, identity, and life should tell us a great deal about how he views all people. Human dignity was something introduced to the world largely by the Word of God. This alone should give us an indication of its divine origin and authorship. It's difficult to find this recognition in the works of ancient philosophers or other religions. The Bible almost uniquely proclaims the dignity of all human beings. Of course, if it's written by God who is impartially fair and just, it's exactly what we should expect. Thanks everyone for spending a little bit of your day with me. I'll see you next time.